influence. Every single interaction that we have with somebody is either increasing our influence and our leadership or decreasing it, right? And it's the little things
Yeah.
with people that are big things.
So when you go into the classroom or to the workshop, or so you do workshops and keynotes, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So when you go in to do a workshop, for example, you have exercises that helps people understand that that influence comes from building trust and
Not exercises for most of what I do or what Mac and I do as we speak together is really talk people through, we share the principle like I just did, but then I'll
yeah,
share the story.
yeah,
Maybe a story from my experience where I knew someone in my career who was always late to every single meeting. It was just, we all knew that was just how it was going to be. She was always going to be late. But sharing,
mm,
share the principle and then share the story from my experience of how it played out. Because here's why people learn subconsciously, right?
yes, yeah,
If I'm just sharing a PowerPoint with information on it, most of us don't learn, we don't absorb that. In fact,
right,
it's boring for a
right.
lot of us. But when we share stories, people connect emotionally to stories. And so I share stories from my experience of where things went right, where things went wrong, where I
Yeah.
got it wrong, because that's how people can best learn.
So real stories share stories. I get it. That's I get that one. I want to ask you to define something because jargon, um, keywords oftentimes get misinterpreted, misunderstood. So define this word for me: resilience.
To me, resilience really means, rising above the ashes and burning brighter because of the flames. Not just surviving, but thriving. And I like to say that what happens to us in life is not as important as who we become because of it.
Hmm.
Because we all go through adversity in life. Life is tough, right? We've all experienced situations with trials and challenges. That's just a fact of the human experience.
Yes.
And there's no doubt that when things happen, they influence us, but they don't determine us. And I think that's where we have, the ability to thrive and be resilient is saying, yes, something happened and it wasn't good. It was painful. It was bad. It was hard, but I can choose to be bitter about it or better because of it.
Well, okay. So now this surprised me a little bit in your TED talk that you were able to talk about this principle in this short time. But now I want you to talk about it, but I want you to really make sure you're coaching me and I fully understand RISE.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that just seems to be a principle that helps you get past a lot of the challenges and to be more resilient. But would you mind just talking us through that?
Sure. I love acronyms. I geek out on acronyms, but RISE is the acronym I use to really
Hmm.
talk about resilience. The first step is what we just discussed about respond proactively. So the R stands for respond proactively. And there again, we have feelings and emotions, but we don't have to make bad choices in life because of what happens. So we can choose to respond positively and proactively. And every time we get it right, our influence can increase. And every time we get it wrong or make the wrong choice, our
Mm.
influence can decrease. I stands for identify accurately. It's kind of a cliche. We've heard that hope isn't a strategy, but you have to have hope to get the strategy, right?
Right, right.
But the trick is to identify accurately what's going to help me move forward, right? And that doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be fancy. It might be as simple as saying, what's the one most important thing I can do in this moment to move in the right direction relative to wherever my goal is, wherever I'm going, wherever I want to find myself. And sometimes when we're going through challenges, we find ourselves, it's like driving through a thick fog and your car headlights won't really shine very far. And that's okay. Just focus right now. Identify what's the next step. I don't need to know the next 10 steps or 100 steps. What's the
Right.
next step? The one thing that's going to move me forward in the direction I want to go. And then the S stands for step forward consistently.
Mm.
Lao Tzu said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So it's important to take that single step, but you got to take the next step, the second and the third and the fourth step, because we overestimate the power of consistency, right? Consistency beats intensity every single time. It's like going to the gym to lose weight, right? If I get on the scale and I'm like, man, I want to lose 5 pounds. So I go to the gym and I work out hard and I come home and I still haven't lost any weight. And so tomorrow I get up and I go to the gym and I work hard and I come home and I still haven't lost any weight, right?
Right, right.
At some point, I'm making progress, but I like to talk about the fact we have to push past the point of no results. I'm making progress going to the gym, exercising, but it hasn't shown up yet, right? And as people, we tend to get frustrated when we don't see instant results. So consistency beats intensity every single time. Just take one step forward every single day, right? You'll get there. And the E stands for experience joy because joy is a choice that we make. It's not a product of our circumstances, right? Now, that doesn't mean ignoring problems or pushing them away. It just means that we can look at any situation and focus on the positives or the negatives, much like a
Mm-hmm.
camera, one of those fancy telephoto lens cameras that the photographer can look through the frame and they can choose to focus on an object in the foreground, a person, for example, and the background might be blurry. Or they could shift the focus and they can focus on the background details and maybe the foreground is blurry, right? Same picture, same frame, but the focus changes. And that's what, when we choose joy, whatever we're going through, we're not saying there's not a problem. We're just saying, you know what, I'm going to change my focus and be grateful for what I've got.
And you might find that. You might find the solution just from that by itself.
Mm.
When I look at the rise, though, and I heard you just explain it just now, it kind of hit me to say, well, wait a minute. You're talking about resilience and overcoming, but doesn't that apply? I mean, the same acronym, doesn't that apply to being a good leader, would you say? I mean, you have to know how to react to situations and you have to make that right choice. I mean, we went all the way through it. Would you say, or would you make some adjustments for leadership versus responding to critical challenges?
I would